All right, here we go. So I'd like to welcome everybody to Statistical Analysis in Psychology. So my name is Dr. Igor Yurichevich, and what we're going to be doing today is just a real straightforward introduction to what this course is, a little bit about what statistics is, a little bit about what statistics is not, and then basically just lay the groundwork and give you a framework for how to approach this entire semester, just so that you know everything that is waiting for you in this fall semester. So as I said, what we're going to do is today is going to be that introduction to statistical analysis in psychology. We'll start off with a brief introduction of who I am. We'll go over the name, and then I'll mention some of the research projects that I do, just so that you can get an idea of where my research interests lie, and also what do I actually use statistics for in my everyday work. And then I'll talk about the stigma-free initiative that I'm a part of. And then we're going to get to one of the most important parts of today, which is answering the question, is this a math course? And once we answer that question, then we're going to talk about another important thing, which is the deadlines that run throughout this course. So I have a variety of different deadlines. Everything, as you're going to see today, is designed as a program to help you understand statistics. So it doesn't matter where you're starting from, you follow the program and you will get to a point where you can understand what's going on. And because of that, some assignments have a 1 week grace period, for example. Some assignments are due at the end of the year, and I just want to make sure that you are knowledgeable about which ones are which. And to that end, too, we'll also hit some syllabus highlights, just so that you can check that out and know where a lot of this information can be found. All right, so who am I? The name. So my name is Dr. Igor Yurichevich, and pronouncing that last name is going to be probably the second hardest thing that you do this semester. So like everything that we're going to do in statistics, we are going to break this down into little pieces that you are capable of doing. And then we're going to put it all together into something brand new. And it's going to be a new skill that you have. So for example, Yurichevich starts off with a U, and then there's a reach. And then you open up and you say, ah. And then finally there's a Veach. And this is not a math course, spoiler alert. But for any mathematicians among you, that little gray circle, so you can understand my level of math sometimes. That little gray triangle is what's known as a Veach. So it's U, reach, Veach. So can we all try that on three? 1, 2, 3. All right, not bad, not bad. That is above the threshold that I typically require. Okay, so this is a very important slide in all of my classes, much more important in statistics. So this is so that you have no apprehension, no hesitation whatsoever to raise your hand and say, Dr. Yurichevich, I didn't understand what you just said. Can you go over it again? Dr. Yurichevich, can you give us another example of what you just talked about, because it's not making sense to me? Dr. Yurichevich, we're in the working workshop part of the course right now, and I'm really having a problem with this analysis. Can you come over and maybe help me out one-on-one? Whatever you need assistance for, use this slide, put the hand up, Dr. Yurichevich, can I get this assistance? And I will assist you to the best of my abilities to make sure that everybody is getting the support that they deserve for them to be successful in this course. So some of you might never raise your hand in this course. That's great. If you get to the end and you say, you know what, statistics make sense to me now, and you never called me over, awesome. If you call me over 5 times a class, every single class, and that's what you need, awesome, right? Whatever you need to get to the point where you understand statistics is what I'm going to try to provide for you. So just to make sure that nobody's hesitant, keep this slide handy. Have any questions, the hand goes up. Dr. Yurichevich, can you help me with this particular statistical thing? All right, so in terms of the research projects that I do, in terms of what I actually use statistics for, My research projects, my main line of research has to do with what is known as visual language. And this is the idea that much like we have a spoken language that we can understand, we also have a visual language that we comprehend in somewhat the same way, but also in many different ways. So we actually understand and can read and can communicate with pictures. And my research in particular takes advantage of a particular genre or medium of images that come from comic books to take a look at metaphorical images. And what metaphorical images basically are is that these are images that depict things that could not exist, like a giant woman holding a bow staff, and you understand it not as a literal representation. This isn't about Mockingbird, who is a giant superhero, but this is about Mockingbird, who's a very important superhero, or a very powerful superhero, or is going to be what this story centers around. We understand that even though it's a metaphorical depiction of those concepts. So the way that I do the research that I do, typically I will either start with a theory or I'll start with an observation, and then I will go to the artifacts that exist there in the world, namely comic book art, and I will start taking a look through it and see if I can prove some of these theories or create some interesting theories based on these observations. So let me give you an example of one of my recent works. Maybe not that recent, but definitely one of my favorite works. So in comic books, you often have to communicate, especially in superhero comics, you often have to communicate that the character that you're looking at is like you, but they're not like you. So you have to communicate that dual nature of these particular characters. So we have Storm here on the left, and Storm is a mutant. She has weather controlling powers, and she is like you in the sense that she is human, because I do believe that the mutants are humans. She is like you, but again, she's not like you, right? Because she's got those powers and it kind of separates her from you, but it also, the image wants to bring you closer and have you identify with her as well. Next one over, we got Magneto, and he has magnetic powers. And once again, he is like you, but he is not like you. And these images convey that. And what I started to notice as I was going through comic book images looking for metaphors is that oftentimes these characters are depicted as being close up, meaning that they're close to you in the frame. So the Rocketeer there, he's right in front of your face. The Joker is way too close to take that photo, right? So they're close up to you. But then there's also this aspect of asymmetry, specifically around the eyes. So the Joker is holding the camera in a really weird way. Typically, people hold it horizontally. They don't put it up there vertically. But that is to cover one of his eyes and leave the other eye open. That skeleton in Mystery Society, that skull, could have been placed anywhere. Could have been placed in the center of the face, could have been placed anywhere in that image. That person is drawn close up, close to you, and also with something covering not both eyes, but just one eye. So there was eye asymmetry. And once you notice a metaphor, oftentimes you go through that phenomenon of you just start seeing it every single place you look. So after I kind of noticed this, I started looking through just a variety of different covers. And I was like, well, there it is on Preacher. That soldier could have been anywhere. That giant head of Star could have been anywhere. But the artist put it together in a composition to let you know that Star, he's kind of like you. He's close, but he's not like you because he's got that asymmetrical eye. Same thing with Muse, and same thing with Witchblader and Tomb Raider. Witchblade could have been placed anywhere, but right over Tomb Raider's left eye. So the one with Muse kind of struck me the most because not only am I a comic book fan, but I am also a David Bowie fan. And that reminded me of this cover from David Bowie's album Aladdin Sane. And this cover came out in 1973. And I started wondering to myself, these metaphors have to come from somewhere, right? Somebody, when they're doing verbal metaphors, has to be the first person that ever said life is a journey. And everybody around them was like, wow, that is deep. I'm going to use that. and it spreads throughout the culture. Well, somebody had to use close-up eye asymmetry first, and people needed to take a look at it, and then it spread through culture. And this image here, David Bowie is known for his different personas. David Bowie is known for being the alien and being the human. So I started thinking maybe this is that ground zero for close-up eye asymmetry. Maybe this is where that visual metaphor originated. And could that possibly be proven using a variety of psychology theories? So basically, I started doing research on this, and some of the steps in this study were rather straightforward. So the first step that I needed to do, and this was one of those steps, and we'll talk about this in statistics. Sometimes you just need to do things, even though you know they're true, just as a proof of existence, just as a proof of concept. So the first step was to prove the point that comic book artists are aware of music album covers. And that's easily shown by just taking a look at comic book covers that pay homage to different album covers. So we have on the left there, Paul McCartney's Band on the Run and Wings, Band on the Run, The Astonishing Spider-Man, used it as an homage. Elementals homaged Abbey Road, Mad Men homaged Aladdin Sane. So clearly comic book artists are aware of rock and roll album covers. Then I started to take a look at who uses close-up eye asymmetry. And there started to emerge a little bit of a pattern where I would notice that the artists that use close-up eye asymmetry, and it looked like a lot of them came out in the 90s, they were a very specific age when Aladdin Sane was released. So Aladdin Sane was released in 1973, and artists like Rob Liefeld, Adam Hughes, Jim Lee, they were all between like 6 years. Todd McFarlane, Mark Silvestri, Frank Miller, they were all between like 6 years to 16 years, which is, if you study artistic development, is what is known as one of those critical periods of artistic development, where you can have a crystallizing experience, is what it's called, where a single image, a single experience of a piece of art just basically gets to live rent-free in your mind for the rest of your life. And that is a huge influence on what you do from there. And once I had this last piece of the puzzle, I had a prediction, and I said to, the prediction was basically that Aladdin Sane came out in 1973, and if you were an artist that was between the ages of 6 and 16 in that critical period in 1973 when the album came out, then your art at its peak, which peaks in the 30s usually for most artists, should massively incorporate close-up eye asymmetry. So I did the study. I went through hundreds of comic book covers and just started counting up how many of these covers use close-up eye asymmetry. I split it up into golden age debuts. These are characters that debuted in the 30s, like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, versus Bronze Age debuts. These are ones that debuted in the 70s, like Wolverine and Punisher. And what you find is that in the 90s, when these artists hit their artistic peak, when they were in their late 20s and early 30s, which again, if you go to the psychology of art, you'll notice that a lot of artists, that's when they do their best work. In those 90s, the golden age characters who already had a fixed visual language of how you draw them, you draw Superman in a certain way, and that was developed in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. You draw Wonder Woman in a certain way, and that was developed in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. There's basically a Bible you go to on how do you depict these. They didn't have much of a change in how often they were drawn with close-up eye asymmetry, but you compare that to the Bronze Age debuts from the 90s when these artists hit their stride, and it just absolutely skyrocketed in terms of how often this metaphor was used. So that only happens in the 90s by people in their 30s, if they're in their teens in 1973 when that David Bowie album came out. So this is very in my mind, convincing proof, although there's always alternative theories, but in my mind, convincing proof that it was that one single image that introduced this metaphor of close-up eye asymmetry to the visual lexicon. If you're interested in more of the details, I will link this article. It's available for free online. Alain Sane and Close-Up Eye Asymmetry, David Bowie's contribution to comic book visual language. And this one I'm particularly proud of, not just because of the work that it did, and as far as I know, one of the first proofs or evidence ever presented that a particular image was the start of a particular metaphor, but it also satisfied one of my bucket list desires or goals of my life, which was to include a F-bomb in a peer-reviewed article, and I got it right there. So that is a rare feat. I don't know if anybody else in this psychology department has achieved that. All right, so I use statistics to analyze these two lines to let me know that those two lines are actually different. And you might be taking a look at that and saying to yourself, well, big deal. I mean, there's your golden age line, there's your bronze age line. They look different. And what we're going to find here this semester is that the goal of statistics is to tell you when two things really are different. And our minds are sometimes very good at knowing if there's an actual difference. So that looks like there's a real difference between those two lines. And as it turns out, there really is a difference between those two lines. But our minds are not made to do that consistently and reliably. And that's why we're going to hand that off to statistics. So this is going to be your first statistics lesson right now in terms of what does statistics do. So what is our final goal in this semester? What do statistics do? Specifically, what does inferential statistics do? And it allows us to answer questions like if you had these two girls here, which player is better at basketball? So you might say to yourself, all right, I need to determine which of these players is better at basketball. And maybe one of them is better than the other. Maybe they both have equal skills, right? Those are the possibilities. So what is it? Which player is better than the other? And you might say to yourself, all right, I know what I'm going to do. They're going to play a game of one-on-one. And they're going to play to a score of 21. First one that gets to 21 wins. And you do that, and it ends up that the score is 21-19. At this point, are you willing to say that this player here is really better than the other player? She actually has better basketball skills than the other player? Or is there that lingering doubt in your mind that maybe there is no difference between these two players and this one lost just because she got an unlucky bounce? It was just that one shot that went off the backboard and hit the rim and she didn't get the shooter's bounce, whatever it was, it's just an unlucky bounce. So what statistics does, it allows us to answer this question. Because what statistics does is it takes into account two things that our human minds are not good at taking into account at the same time. And those are the size of differences, and those are the reliability of differences. So right here, the size of this difference, not very much. That's a single basket, not that much of a difference. However, let's say that the outcome of the game was this, 21-2. After an outcome like this, most of us would be confident in saying, yeah, this player here, she is actually a better basketball player. And it is possible that this one had 10 unlucky bounces, right? It's within the realm of possibility, but we're not willing to go that unlikely. We're not willing to give her that much of a benefit of the doubt. So 21-2, we're going to say, you know what? That's not an unlucky bounce or a whole bunch of unlucky bounces. That first player, she is actually better. Well, let's back it up a little bit. Let's say that we still have just that small difference. And we want to know which of these players, if either one, is actually better. So let's say that we tell them, you know what, you're going to play another game. And after that, we play another game. And after that, we play a fourth game and a fifth game and a sixth game. And let's say that we play 20 games, right, over a period of 20 days, because we don't want to burn these players out. Let's say that we play 20 games. And in every single game, the player on the left wins. Sometimes it's 21-20. Sometimes it's 21-19. The other player is always close, 21-19, 21-20, 21-18, 21-19. But in 20 out of 20 games, that girl on the left wins. In that case, even though the difference is small, we would still say, yeah, she's the better player. We are unwilling to say that 20 games in a row were lost because of an unlucky bounce. And that is what statistics does. Statistics takes it out of our unreliable human minds and compares two things at the same time. It compares how big of a difference is there, and then it compares how reliable of a difference is there. And that's what lets us know that there is an actual real difference. So in this scenario here, we don't know if there's a real difference. But in this scenario here, yeah, probably a real difference. And in this scenario here, yeah, probably a real difference. And that's what statistics is going to allow us to do. All right. Back to a little bit more of the research that I do. So once I had that first publication on close-up eye asymmetry, I decided to investigate it a little bit further. And one of the things that I mentioned is that close-up eye asymmetry is supposed to communicate when a character is like you, but not like you. And that idea of being like you, but not unlike you, but not like you, not unlike you is the same thing. That idea of being like you, but not like you is something that is very often depicted in Gothic stories. So Gothic characters, Gothic monsters tend to be like an individual, like a person, like a vampire is kind of like a person, a zombie is kind of like a person, but they're not like you. Zombies are the undead, vampires are, they might look human, but they are creatures of the night. So that is something that is oftentimes used in depiction of Gothic characters. So I thought to myself, well, if it actually communicates this idea of the abject, the thing that is accepted but should be shunned, that kind of dual nature, then we should see close-up eye asymmetry being used a lot in Gothic type characters and not so much in characters that don't portray any of these Gothic otherness kind of characteristics. So I thought to myself, well, what are two of the most popular characters that are opposite in this kind of criteria? And I came up with Superman and Batman. And Superman is light. Superman is hope. Superman fits into society. He fights for truth, justice, and the American way. And on the other hand, you have Batman, and Batman is dark, and Batman is in the shadows, and Batman is not accepted by society. Sure, Commissioner Gordon likes him, but there's a lot of people on the police force that don't like Batman and his vigilante ways. He lives in the shadows. He's not like us. So if close-up eye asymmetry is actually communicating this idea of like you versus not like you, then in comic book covers depicting Superman, you should not get a lot of close-up eye asymmetry. But in comic books depicting Batman, you should get a lot more close-up eye asymmetry. So once again, back to the comics, did the analysis. And what we have here is on the y-axis there, on the x-axis, sorry, that is the publication date. So that is just basically on the left there, earliest publications, on the right, the latest publications. And then on that y-axis is just the cumulative amount of covers. So how many covers by 1970 did I find that had Batman depicted with close-up eye asymmetry? How many covers by 1980 did I find? So it's a cumulative line that just keeps going up, up, and up. So that was Batman's line. And then this is Superman's line. And that's Batman's. And that's Superman's. And that's Batman's. And this one here is a little less obvious whether or not that's a real difference, right? Because the previous experiment, that was like the basketball game that was 21-2. And it was really easy for your eyes to say, yeah, there's a real difference. But this one here is a little bit 21-19. where, yeah, we can see that Batman has more instances of close-up eye asymmetry, but is that really more, or is it just kind of lucky bounces? Is it just sort of the artist that got placed on the Superman book rather than artists that got placed on the Batman book? Is there another world where this trend would have been reversed? That's what we need statistics to answer. And as it turns out, those two lines actually are different, giving evidence that close-up eye asymmetry actually does communicate abjectness, actually does communicate the idea that somebody is accepted and also not accepted. And I mentioned before that I'm a visual presenter, hence why we waited for the IT help. And when I say I'm a visual presenter, I am a visual presenter, and I took extra time. I don't want to say how much more extra time, but I took extra time to make sure that when I scaled those graphs, for the Superman graph, both of his eyes were exposed, but for the Batman graph, he actually has close-up eye asymmetry. And yeah, I just put it on my bucket list again. Just the meta communication of this graph was very, very satisfying. And one reviewer noticed it, and they're literally one of my favorite reviewers of all time. All right. So one last note on research. If you're interested in learning more about the research that I do, you can visit my IUSB psychology faculty and staff page. I don't know how they let me publish this. I put it in thinking, oh, I'm getting rejected, but it's there. But anyway, so take a look at that, see some of the projects that I've been working on. One of the really, really cool things about the work that I do is that because I don't test subjects directly, because I don't test participants directly, I never have to go through IRB. So if you have an idea for a research project and you come into my office and we discuss how to go forward with your research project, you can literally start as soon as you walk out of the office. We don't have to fill out forms. It's ethical because we're not dealing with human subjects, we're dealing with artifacts, so we can basically do whatever we like. That being said, if you are interested, I just want to bring it to your attention that there is a research lab entrance exam. And this is just to make sure that you possess the skills that would benefit both of us so that you have the skills that would where research would benefit you and also where you can contribute to the lab. The research lab entrance exam is on that website. So if you're interested, give it a shot, give it a try. It will let you know what to do when you solve the riddle. And that's all I'm going to say because now I'm making it sound creepy. All right. So last thing, stigma-free initiative. So years ago, I took a pledge from the National Alliance on Mental Illness to be stigma-free, to live my life stigma-free, and basically to try to alleviate some of the stigma that surrounds mental health issues. And part of that is just being honest and transparent about my own struggles with mental health and just the impact that it has on your ability to function. So it's something that is underappreciated. It's something that people don't really treat the same way that they treat other challenges. So if you ever broke your arm and you were walking around with a cast and somebody said, hey, did you break your arm? You would not put your cast behind your back and say, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. And they're like, really? And you're like, yeah, I didn't break my arm. I just like keeping my arm back here. I'm totally fine. No, you'd be like, oh yeah, you know what? I broke my arm and it hurt. It's going to be a few months before I get this cast off. Mental illness and mental health issues are different. People hide them. People don't get the treatment that they need. People don't reach out for the help that they need. And part of it is that stigma that is around mental health. And part of the way that we can get rid of that stigma is just to talk openly about it. So this is my stigma-free TED Talk, if you will. All right, so just to kind of give you the story of my own struggle with mental health. So in 2010, I started at IUSB, and then in the spring of 2012, I was diagnosed with depression. And I would love if my story was that I started feeling depressed. And after maybe like a week, I went to my doctor, and my doctor was like, yeah, you should go talk to somebody. And I set up an appointment, and my therapist was like, yeah, you have depression. Let's get you helped, right? Let's get you some help. That's not the way that happened. Unfortunately, I was undiagnosed for years. I was living with depression for years. And that is one of the reasons why I share this story, because I don't want that to happen to other people. And depression can wreck you. Depression can really, really impact your functioning. So I started getting treatment. I had a prescription. I had cognitive behavioral therapy. In spring, just before the spring of 2013, my final prescription was filled. And I also wish it was part of my story to tell you that was it. Depression was gone. I was done. I beat depression. That's not true. In reality, I'm still in recovery. I'm still working on it. I still have good days, still have bad days. And that's just the way that this works. There are way more good days than bad days. And the bad days are not so bad anymore. But it's still a process of recovery. So to kind of show you the impact that this has on a person's ability to function, one of the main measures that we have for a professor's productivity is how many articles do they publish? Specifically, how many peer-reviewed in the green or non-peer-reviewed in the blue publications do they put out in their career? And when I was struggling with depression, I had one publication, and that came in 2012. And then there was nothing, because I couldn't do anything, because it took everything that I could to just get out of bed, cover up the fact that I was struggling with this, come to work, do whatever I could to get by for that day, and then go back home, rinse and repeat, and do it again. However, that was not the life that I was meant for. That was not the life that I should have been living. So after the treatment, once I got back to a more functional place, then I started to be able to be more productive. So in 2016, I had 2 publications, one peer-reviewed, one non-peer-reviewed. Later in 2016, another publication came out. 2017, I had 5 publications come out. And I really need to update this every single semester, but I always run out of time. But clearly there's a difference between when you're firing on all cylinders and when there's no gas in the tank and you're struggling. And like I said, I wish, I could just tell you, hey, it's been smooth sailing ever since. And I will tell you, after the treatment, things got way, way better. And there are really, really good times. But also, there are really, really bad times. So 2021 was literally the worst year of my life. And that was followed up by 2023, which then became the worst year of my life. So one of those I'll share with you. In 2023, me and my daughter in January were hit by a car. And when I say hit by a car, I don't mean we were in our car and we were in an accident with another car. I mean, tons of metal was hurtling towards me and my daughter outside of a car. And I was able to pull us over the barrier. We were on the highway because we had just been in an accident. I was able to pull us over the barrier, but we did not come away unscathed. And it was literally life or death. The policeman that was at the scene afterwards when we were describing what happened, he literally said, you guys would have died if you didn't get out of the way. So near-death experience. And you might be wondering, yeah, that kind of messes you up for a little bit. And that's also part of what I'm still in recovery for. But all this to say, this is my story. And all of you are going to have your own stories. And some of you are going to be in the green this semester. And you're just going to be killing it, and you're just going to be firing on all cylinders. And I love that. That is awesome, amazing. Some of you are going to be in the red. And I just want you to know that when you're in the red, you can reach out to me You don't need to wait. And I just want you to know that I get it. I understand. Because when I wasn't reaching out to people to try to help me, it was because, you know what? I felt lazy. I felt like I should be better than this. This is just laziness on my part. That's why I'm having such a hard time. I'm just going to power through it. Or I was embarrassed. Or I thought they wouldn't believe me. Or any number of reasons. I went through it all. So when I get emails from students and they're willing to open up to me and say, hey, you know what? I'm going through something right now. I love it when they do that. It does hurt my soul a little bit when they started off with, this is going to sound lazy or you might not believe this. I will, and it doesn't. It doesn't sound lazy. So whatever is happening, okay, if you've lost your job and you're freaking out, if somebody in your family that's close to you died, if your situation has changed because somebody in your family needs medical assistance and you're going to be the caregiver, if your dog died, if you just went through a horrible breakup, if you're in a toxic relationship and you're trying to get out, all of these things are big things. All of these things can affect you in ways that, in those ways, to the left. Okay? And the one thing that you don't need at that time are statistics, deadlines to just add to the pressure. So if you need to reach out and you need some help, I will help you in whatever way that I can. There are limits to what I can do, but I can make sure that the pressures of this course are not one of the things that are weighing you down. So again, I seriously, I understand things happen. Just let me know. And you can tell me as much detail as you want, or you can tell me as little detail as you want. All right. My default, because of what I went through, is to believe you. So if you just send me an email saying, hey, you know what, I'm really struggling right now. I can't tell you why, but can we work out something where I can turn these in a little bit later? I'll be like, you know what? Yes, we can. And we'll go from there. All right. So that's my public service announcement. Don't suffer longer than you have, longer than you already have. If it's on your mind, maybe I should reach out to Dr. Udicevich. Send me that Canvas message, and we'll do what we can. All right, back to stats. So the question that is on most people's minds, is this a math course? And the feeling that most people have is that feeling when they're wondering whether or not this is a math course. So rather than tell you whether or not this is a math course, I'm going to convince you of that fact. And we're going to start with one of my favorite people in terms of educating scientific things, and that is Neil deGrasse Tyson. So I got 2 videos from Neil deGrasse Tyson on this particular subject.
Who do you think is the most extraordinary scientific mind that that humanity has produced?
There is no contest. Isaac Newton. Nobody comes close.
Explain why.
He, working alone, discovers the laws of motion. Then he discovers the law of gravity, universal law of gravitation. Oh, and then someone asks, Ike, or I don't know what they call him, Ike, why do your planets orbit in this shape, ellipses, ovals, rather than perfect circle? They say, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And he goes home, and he comes back, I finally have my answer. And they say, well, Isaac, how did you do that? Well, I had to invent integral and differential calculus to answer that question. He then discovers the laws of optics, deducing that white light is composed of colors, because you could take those same colors, recombine them, and get white light, which freaked out artists of the day. He does all of this. Then he turns 26.
All right, so that's Isaac Newton. We now have part 2.
Surely in your life, you have taken an average of numbers before. The first time anyone ever did that, to realize that maybe there's some interesting result here, was after after the invention of algebra, trigonometry, geometry, and calculus. Statistics is just something that the human brain, it's just not natural. We don't know how to interpret simple random events because we want to give meaning to them.
Okay, so he's right on the, well, he's right on both, but especially in that second one, statistics is not a natural way of thinking about things. It's not natural for our human mind. However, that does not mean that it's not straightforward. And I'll show you what I mean. So he mentioned, Neil deGrasse Tyson mentioned that geometry was invented. And geometry was invented by Euclid. And then algebra was invented by Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. And then trigonometry was invented by Hipparchus. And then calculus was invented by Isaac Newton. And still statistics wasn't invented. Still the average of numbers was not invented. And if you take a look at calculus, so if you take a look at differential calculus, this is the basic formula for differential calculus. So you got a function equal, the derivative of a function at x equals the limit as h approaches 0 of fx plus h minus fx over h. That's tough. That has something in there that is very difficult for our human minds to conceive of, and that is a limit. Something that's infinitesimally close to 0, but not at 0, right? And infinitesimal is just not something that human brains do well. Plus, there's just a lot of letters and things there and arrows and lines and stuff, right? It's a complicated idea. Calculus is a complicated idea. Compare this to the mean. So Carl Friedrich Gauss, he was the one that eventually standardized what the mean is. The mean does not look like that. The average of numbers does not look like that. It looks like this. And that top part, that's adding things together. And that bottom part, that's dividing. And what this is, it's the mean, so that x bar, that is the mean, equals sigma x is the sum of all your scores, divided by n is the number of your scores. And that's it. And that came after geometry, trigonometry, algebra, and calculus. There is nothing hard about that. There is no new math about that. Nobody in here does not know how to add. Nobody in here does not know how to divide. So that is why this is not a math course. You have all the math that you need. And it's not even going to be difficult math that we do. It's going to be summing things together, dividing by the number. That is what we're going to have in this course. It's very straightforward. It's just not something that our human minds naturally do. You are not going to come up with statistics on your own, but the good thing is that you don't have to. Somebody already figured it out, and we are just going to transform the way that we think about the world so that we can apply these statistical tools. Now, before I go off of this slide, I do want to mention one really important hack that you can do to make this semester much more easy. And that is, whenever you're working with formulas, whenever you are reading in your textbook, reading in your homework, looking up at slides like this, never read the variables. Because if I look at that formula and I tell you x bar equals sum of x divided by n, that's meaningless. You'll be sitting there going, what's the next bar? Sum of x, what is x? I don't get it. Divided by n, what are n? However, if you get into the habit of reading it out in your mind, or if you're reading aloud, read it out aloud, and you're gonna see, I'm gonna do this in the lectures. If instead of x bar, you say the mean, and instead of sum of x's, you say the sum of scores. Or even worse, sigma x? No. Sigma x is the sum of scores. N is the number of scores. So if you get into that habit, then this formula transforms from x bar equals sigma x divided by n, which is meaningless, into the mean of x equals the sum of the scores divided by the number of scores. And that makes sense. So if you do that over and over and over again, what your mind will do is it'll change these symbols into the words that they actually mean. So that when you come across that, you're going to immediately go, oh, okay, the mean of x equals the sum of the scores divided by the number of scores. And that's going to make way more sense than x bar equals sigma x over n. So start doing that right off the bat. Get into that habit. If you need to have a little cheat sheet where you write out x bar equals the average of x, sigma x equals the sum of the scores, do that, but get into that habit of reading it out in your mind as you read and doing that. All right, so is this a math course? The answer is no, it's not. This is a statistics course. It doesn't use any more math. It applies math to the world, but it's very simple math. It's adding, it's dividing. That's all that it is. So if you can add and you can divide, you can do statistics. You're not going to come up with it on your own because it's not a natural way of thinking, but you are going to be able to adopt that way of thinking. So if you follow the program that is laid out in this course, then you are going to go from what I assume many of you were doing at the beginning of this course, or when you found out that you had to take a statistics course and you felt like that. If you follow the program as we go through it, I can get you to this. And well, that might be a little much. I'll get you to this. All right, I can get you here, where you'll get to the end of the course and you'll say to yourself, you know what? I might have been scared at the beginning. I might have been feeling really anxious. I might have thought, you know what? I'll just struggle through this and maybe I'll get to the end and I'll get my C minus and that'll be enough for my major. To the point where you're like, hey, I get it. I understand statistics now. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Turns out it is all adding and dividing. Not so bad. And you'll have a new way of approaching and understanding the world, which is not so bad either. So we'll get you there. The question now is, how do we get there? That's what we're going to spend the last 15 minutes of today on. So the way that we're going to get there, and again, this is a statistics program that I've developed that I've used over and over and over again. And it basically starts off really simple and then builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And one of the tools that we're going to use, and this is brand new this semester, is Achieve. So Achieve is an online learning platform. It's where you're going to find your textbook. It's where you're going to find your assignments. You can access this in Canvas modules. So you go to Canvas modules. The top ones there, they're to go to Achieve Home, your ebook, registration start there. And then Achieve Assignments basically has the quick link to all the assignments, or you can just go to the Achieve Home page and you can find them there as well. It's laid out like this with different weeks. And it's very important for you to know ahead of time that some of these assignments have different deadline, different types of deadlines. So you can find all your assignments, but it's not going to be listed on this week by week organization page what kind of assignment each one of these are. So I just want to go through that right now so that we have that out of the way so that you're aware of it. So right now that you know where to find your assignments, now we're going to talk about what are the actual deadlines. All right, so the first one. The first kind of deadline is by the posted deadline. So each of those, everything in week one is due at the end of week one. So all the assignments are going to be due Sunday by midnight. Week two, everything is due Sunday by midnight. There are, some of the assignments are going to be due by the posted deadline, but you have an automatic 1 week grace period where you can hand in your assignment up to 7 days with no penalty whatsoever. So the ones that fall under this are things like the practice assignment. So practice assignments, they're low stakes, quick assignments that are designed to prepare you for the work for this before anything that new actually begins. They're basically your warm up for the semester. So this first ones are due at the end of week one, but you have until the end of week two, no penalty, no questions asked, you can do that. So we have the practice assignments. We have surveys. So these are, again, quick, low stakes, and they're designed to improve your learning experience. It's an easy way to earn yourself some points. And it's also a nice way to sort of be mindful of what we're going through in this particular semester. And then the other one that is due within 7 days of its due date, and this one is due within 7 days for a very, very important reason, is the vocab coach. So the vocab coach is basically an adaptive learning quiz that adapts to your progress, that teaches you the vocabulary of statistics. And what that'll do is it'll help you get really solid in your mind the things that we're talking about. So when we talk about t-scores, and I tell you that the t-score equals the sample mean minus the predicted mean divided by the standard error, there are a lot of words that you don't know yet in that sentence. And the more immediate you know what a standard error is when we get to that point, the better your learning and experience is going to be. The more immediate you know exactly what a deviation is, the better your learning experience is going to be. That's what this vocab coach is going to get you to. It's going to teach you the vocabulary so that when we're talking about it in class, you don't have to stop there and think about it and then finally say, oh, okay, now I remember what a standard error is. And then you look up and I'm 30 seconds beyond that point. And you're like, well, wait, what did he say those last 30 seconds? Now I'm really lost. No. I don't want that for you guys. That's why the vocab coach is due at the end of the week. It's usually going to be due before we actually start the chapter, just so that when you come to class, you are ready to go. You know what all the terms mean. That is why that one needs to be done by the deadline. But I understand things happen, so you got a 1 week grace period. The earlier you can do it, the more benefit you'll get from it. All right, next class of deadlines. This is probably going to be your favorite. This is things that are due at the final day of class. So literally in December, whatever that final day is. So the reason that I do this is because understanding statistics, and I'm going to get a little poetical here. Understanding statistics, if I needed to give it a metaphor, an analogy, it's like finding love. So if you're out there looking for love, I can't predict if you're going to find it on the next date you go on. I can't predict if you're going to go through 3, 4, 5 relationships before you finally find it. But if you are out there looking for love, I am very confident that you will eventually find it. I just don't know when. It's the same with statistics. Statistics is one of those weird concepts. Again, your human mind is not made to understand statistics. So I don't know if statistics is going to click for you in week 3. I don't know if it's going to take until week 6 in this course. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know it's going to happen. And someday you're going to be baking desserts with statistics, and statistics is going to put some flour on your nose, and you're going to say, oh, statistics, you're so wonderful. But much like love, I don't know when it's going to happen for you that you're going to understand statistics. I just know that it's going to happen. So that's why many of your assignments are due at the end of the semester. So that when it finally happens, when you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, I get it now. Standard deviation, it totally makes sense. Let me go back to chapter 3, and now I'm going to do that homework. So it's really something flexible to allow your own learning pace to be supported. So what is due at the end of the semester with no late penalty? The readings. So try to do the readings before coming to the lecture. Try to do the reading assignments before coming to the lectures, but they are due by the end of the semester. And just because of the way other things are built into this that I haven't talked about yet, but because of the way statistics is designed, one of the big things that you will benefit from is doing it over and over and over until you get it right. And that's why you'll see a lot of these assignments have unlimited attempts. And a lot of them have no penalty for incorrect attempts. Achieve will let you know when you click on an assignment whether or not you get penalized for multiple attempts. So just check that before, but most of them will not. And you got 107 days to finish this. That's the end of the semester. So the reading quizzes that you do as you're reading the textbook, those are due at the end of the semester. I put due dates on them because that is when I highly recommend you get them done. But again, if you haven't found love in your third week, or if statistics hasn't found you, I'm beating that metaphor to death right now. But if it hasn't happened yet, that's fine. You don't have to keep banging your head against the wall. Give it some time, come back to it later, whatever you need. Also on the final day of class are the learning curve quizzes. These are like the vocab coaches where they're adaptive, but these test your general concepts and general knowledge. Again, I have the due dates when I would say that you should shoot for those, but if something isn't just making sense, trust the process, it will eventually make sense. Go back and finish it at that point. And then finally, the homework assignments. You have unlimited attempts for the homework assignments, and they're due at the end of the semester. There is partial credit for incorrect attempts, but you do have unlimited attempts. And we'll talk about some of the features of the homework assignments when they start coming up. But this new platform that I've adopted, Achieve, has some very, very cool stuff in it, which I will make you aware of as we go through this semester. All right, so that's the final day of classes. Two last deadlines. You got your final day of exams, and no surprise, that's when all your exams are due. So all your exams are actually available right now. They're in week 17. And you'll see that they're not cumulative. It goes chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. Not all the chapters are represented because some of them are just foundational concepts which aren't really testable in an exam type situation. But they're not cumulative. And the reason they're not cumulative is because stats, by its very nature, is cumulative. So what we learn in week 1 will be used in week 2. What we learn in week 2 will be used in week 3. So I don't have to make a cumulative exam. It's just going to be cumulative by the nature of statistics. And on that note, I would highly recommend, as you go through, make a note of the concepts that you're maybe struggling with that you don't have down, super well. Dedicate a little bit more time to them. Keep them on the back burner if needed, but come back to them eventually because they're like building blocks, and you want to make sure that your foundation is set before you go into the wild and crazy stuff of the later semester. All right, and then these are multi-take exams. No late submissions. They're due on the final day of exams, but you get up to 4 retakes for this. So if you think you're ready and you find out you're not, which oftentimes happens, no biggie. You got 4 more, you can do it 4 more times, so it's not that big a deal. All right, and then there's one last type of deadline, and these are by the posted deadline, and these have no grace period. And the reason they have no grace period is for no other reason than Achieve will not allow me to give you a grace period. So normally I would give grace periods. I just want you to know these are ones that come with no grace periods. They are due when they say they're due, and if you don't get them done by the deadline, then it's just an opportunity that's missed. But they're not that big. There's very few of them actually. So the first one are interactive video activities. So these are 2 activities to get you up to speed on order of operations and to get you up to speed on summation notation. And you can see the length there. It's literally 4.5 minutes. So just bang those out and make sure that you're ready for the minimal amount of math that we're going to do. And then the other ones, I'm actually really interested to see how these ones work out. These are reflection moments, and they're going to be bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. And these are concepts that are the things years from now that you're going to encounter in your career, and you're going to ask yourself, why didn't anybody tell me about this when I was in school? It's all those skills where you think to yourself, it would have been really useful to have known some of these things. Why didn't anybody teach me? So this is my attempt to teach things. So it's they're all going to be taken from Seth Godin's blog, and we'll let you encounter them as you go through. And it's really just a short kind of response. Here's something to read. And then you get the prompts in the right, how do you think you'll apply this to your statistics course and your approach to this course? And I highly, highly, highly recommend just checking out some of Seth Godin's work. Leap First, his audiobook, was one of the things that got me the courage to once again start submitting my articles for publication. So I owe a big debt to Seth Godin, and he's changed the way that I do my work, and I'm hoping to pay it forward because this is something I wish I knew when I was in grad school. So I will hopefully help you out with some of those things that'll pay off much, much later. All right, so those were the deadlines. We don't have a lot of time left, so I'm just going to go through some quick contact information and then just tell you about the syllabus, and then we'll wrap it up for today. So contact information. My office, don't worry about it. I'm almost never there. So I do a lot of my work remotely. So if you go up to my office, you can find out where it is. You can knock on the door and you can send me an email because I won't be in my office. However, I do have office hours. There's Zoom office hours. There's the link. There's a link on the homepage. There's a link in the syllabus as well. It's going to be Wednesdays and Fridays, 3 to 4. There's my phone number. Don't use it. I still have messages blinking that I don't know how to access. If you want to get in contact with me for whatever reason, please use Canvas messages. Do not use my work email for 2 reasons. Number one, I'm committed to checking Canvas messages on a 24-hour cycle, meaning that if you get your message in before 4 p.m., I will get back to you that day. If not, I will get back to you tomorrow by 4 p.m. That is a commitment I made to my students. The other reason is because I talked about my mental health issues. Emails is just one of those things for me. Emails just make me anxious. I need to get revved up for emails often, and then I need a cool down period after my emails. Not Canvas messages, my work emails. And if I'm stressed, emails are the first thing that goes. And the chair of the department knows this. Dr. Ritchie knows this. She has my cell phone number, so if there's any fires that really need putting out, she can get in contact with me. But sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I go weeks without checking my email. I don't want to do that to my students. I check Canvas messages Monday to Friday, 24 hours. Email, I don't. So if you need anything, please use Canvas messages. I will get back to you within that window of response time. All right, we're going a little bit overboard, so I'm just going to plug the syllabus. Do check out the syllabus, information on performance evaluations, information on the many types of deadlines, information about what I think of AI. I love it. I encourage you to use it. You don't have to tell me that you're using it. It's also, spoiler alert, built into Achieve to help you with your learning goals. So if you like ChatGPT, or you like Claude, or you like Perplexity, or you like Bing, and it helps you learn, by all means do it. If you're struggling with your homework and you just want to go, hey, ChatGPT, how do I do this? By all means do it. It's a tool. I love it. It's there in my policy just in case you're feeling weird. You can read the policy. Other than that, the class schedule is there also in the syllabus, and it'll let you know what we're covering on the week and just all the little things that are being assigned that week. It might look like a lot, but some of these are literally like little 5-minute quizzes, little things that you can read. And again, remember, some of them are due that week, some of them are due at the end of the semester. Be aware of which ones are which and just kind of pace yourself for your own, what would benefit your own learning experience. All right, so that is it. Everybody feeling better? Awesome, cool. So next class, we'll start up with just some basic terms, some basic ideas in statistics. But other than that, we are done for today.